And I'm Guy, and this is your home for everything Alberta independence. I would say let's get into it, but if you can hear anything in the background, I mean, we have noise cancellation on. There is a huge storm outside of the studio right now. This is probably the biggest one since I've been here. It's hailing, the wind is going crazy, the trees are blowing, so...
Hopefully a tree doesn't come through.
if the electricity goes out, we'll do our best to get back on as soon as possible.
Yes, y'all know the gist by now. You know how it works here over in Mexico. But first of all, thank you so much for joining us today as it hails and storms. Please don't forget to subscribe because, again, it really does help us out. Also, we try to read most, if not all, of your comments live after each segment. However, we do pause the whole show and give priorities to Super Chats, and those help us out a lot as well. So thank you to everybody. And we have memberships. Thank you to all our members.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say thanks to everybody that joined us yesterday. We had a new show we debuted. Yeah. I think we're going to try to do it Tuesday, Thursday, so we can rotate sets. All about the American midterms and the 2028 election. We need to hopefully get somebody like J.D. Vance in there that is going to recognize Alberta as an independent nation once that binding referendum comes. I know Danielle Smith and Mark Carney think they can lengthen this process out to 2.5 or 3 years. It needs to get done in 6 to 12 months, but just in case it's not done in a quick time frame, we want to make sure whoever follows up after Trump is going to recognize Alberta.
True. But I'll start saying hello to Todd. Hello, Todd. Thank you for being here. And says, on my way to Red Deer, cool, SHIT, because we just started. People want Republic of Alberta door magnets and get 4 more of Jason Levine's 4x8s. Great.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. And it's nice that they have all the yard signs at that particular store. Yes. Corey Morgan, Jason Levine, and the rest of them.
True. And also says, God, let Alberta decide upon another stand today, double-sided. Great.
Fantastic. And there's a lot of big signs going up all over Alberta, but I think our best benefit or our best advertising are these huge flags that are going up everywhere, and not just the huge flags, just the regular flags. This is really triggering the other side, and it's becoming a symbol of freedom, which is absolutely fantastic. This kind of takes away a little bit of what the Liberals did to the Canadian flag, trying to represent this as some kind of nationalist socialist flag. The Alberta flag is now truly a sign of freedom.
True. But before we start, hold on. But before we start, let me come back to me. There we go.
Oh, I didn't realize you were on me there the whole time.
I was on you, Bill.
It looks like you're having some trouble there now. What's going on?
Hilliard says, watching from Innisfail, Alberta, you both stay safe and the storm will not last too long. No, luckily here they kind of come and go pretty quickly.
Yeah,
it's already calming down.
It's usually between 1 and 3 hours. The harder it comes in, the faster it leaves, it seems like.
Exactly. And I noticed that you added something, so I'm looking for it. Here we go. I found it. So we can start. Let's start with breaking news, and then we'll continue reading your comments.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
I made it. And now let's start with this from CBS News, but I mean, technically it is Trump.
I will say this just broke right before we went on the air. Right before we go on the air, I do one final scan of news to see if there's anything going on there. And Trump happened to mention Canada and the tariffs, and not in a good way. And the Canadians are starting to panic now. They finally sent negotiating teams to start negotiating. The problem is a lot of the things they're trying to negotiate for won't help Canada overall.
Mm-hmm. Oh. As we always do, we play the clips on 2.5 because otherwise we get copyrighted.
Remember, I used to say that tariffs are my favorite word.
And we're back. Apologies for that. Again, that was a thunder that took us out. Usually it's not a thunder.
Well, I think what happened, somebody installed something larger on the roof, and I think a thunder actually hit the building because half the lights in our place are now flickering. Yeah. And it made an absolute boom. The apartment shook when that happened. So another time when we first started streaming from down here in Mexico City, we were live and an earthquake happened, actually. But it was very subtle on camera, I think.
So watch for those as well. But let me just continue saying hello to people, I guess. Option Trader says, hi from New York, Alberta. Independence will be great for you guys. Yes. And Anya Zinski says, hi, Nat and Guy. And that, I think that's when it cut off. Watching from Edmonton, Alberta. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, and I say we're a little bit darker than normal because a couple of our lights went out in the house permanently. I don't know what's going to happen there.
William Rebell says, guys, something is for sure. You married up. Thank you so much.
Well, that would mean she married down, so I guess I can agree to that. Yeah, I had to get the flashlight out there as well.
And Yazinski says, you're frozen. The storm. Yeah. And Todd says, run, Nat, run. LOL. Well, I tried. And William Rebell says, don't apologize, Nat. We know, because I said apologies, because we went out. You gave us a heads up. Besides, we blame Guy. LOL. No, don't blame Guy. Blame whoever installed things on the roof.
Blame Nat.
And Billy Hillier, thank you so much. Says no apologies needed. And Todd says, find your buttons, Nat. I found them. And William Rebell says, lol, Sears was aiming for Guy and missed. No, hopefully not. Hopefully not. But we were watching Donald Trump.
Yeah, let's start the Trump clip over again.
Hold on. Actually, before we do that, over on Are You and Billy, thank you so much, Shaunavision, saying good evening. And thank you so much for the $5 Rumble Rant, saying, love the great video production. Funnily enough, right as this happened, camera work and lighting again, not to mention content. Thank you so much. And also says, my Rumble Rant is not sarcasm. I sent it prior to your power outage. And I did see it prior to the power outage, but wasn't able to read it before it happened. Again, it might happen again. It's still kind of raining, storming less, but hopefully.
Well, I thought it was actually going to go out for quite a while because I think the lightning actually hit the building that time. So, yeah, okay, let's keep going here though.
We were on this clip of CBS News, Trump saying Canada's nasty.
And again, this happened just before I went on the air. I usually scan the news right before I got on, and this was breaking. So,
remember, I used to say that tariffs are my favorite word. I love tariffs. They're my favorite word in the dictionary. Tariff. I love tariffs, right? Because we've been screwed by tariffs used against us for years by China, by Japan, by South Korea, by Germany, by everybody, by Canada. Canada's nasty. They are. They're nasty. People think Canada, they're nasty. I love the people, but they're nasty. Nasty leadership. And Mexico, they all did it to us. But now that doesn't work anymore because we turned the table on everybody. And that's why you're seeing numbers like you've never seen before this week. Remember?
And it's interesting because he called out a lot of countries there, but he specifically dug into Canada when Canada came up. And Carney is desperately trying to get to the negotiating table now. Before he was just letting it go, but the 19th of this month, those new tariffs kick in. And it seems like his negotiating strategy here, just before we went on, I was watching Northern Perspective, and they did another good report talking about how he's trying to negotiate this 50% tariff down. And what he's trying to do is saying, well, why don't we have a limitation on how much can go into the United States? And after that, everything above that will be 50%. That would limit a lot of industries in Canada, especially the steel and aluminum industry. That is a bad deal unless you're trying to nationalize national resources and you only want a certain amount and you want private businesses to kind of go under.
But let me get back to your comments, and then we'll get into Alberta Stay Free. Hold on, where are we? Silverfeet says, hello, you got here right on time. And Todd says, if Donald loves tariffs, so do I, LOL. Canadians getting what they finally deserve. Yeah,
tariffs are actually not this big scary thing a lot of people put it up to be. A lot of other countries are actually eating the cost. Manufacturers from China are primarily eating the cost. Goods are going up, but they're only going up slightly. And a lot of people are actually surprised by this. It's really hard to hit them with the fact that, inflation is so high. Because when you look at other places, I would say the tariffs are not really making inflation grow a tremendous amount like people had originally expected. And it's because countries and private businesses are eating the cost on their end because they want access to one of the largest markets in the world.
Exactly. But now let's get into Alberta Stay Free.
Yeah.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep in the mud.
Let's get a bit more local, and let's start with this from Peter McCaffrey saying, quote, if your neighbor displaying an Alberta flag makes you feel quote unquote weird, that's on you, not them. And I fully agree with that. Again, it is the provincial flag after all, and it shows more about them than it does about who's displaying the flag.
Well, and this is absolutely fantastic that we chose the Alberta flag as the symbol for Alberta independence, because it's really tough for them to ban that symbol. If it was anything else, they would have taken action and called it hate speech to fly any other symbol but the Alberta flag. Let's actually go into the article a little bit here. I know I forgot to tell you before the show. Usually I do, but I haven't read the full article, but I'm interested to see what how the mainstream media is going to try to spin this one.
Yes, let me just double check. Okay, it's mad at me, but whatever. Because I put on ad blocks. It says Sarah Batchelor, I'm going to have to read it this way. Sarah Batchelor says it started a few weeks ago when a large blue flag bearing Alberta's shield of arms, see, this is why I like to open the birds, shield of arms appeared on her neighbor's window in Airdrie, a city north of Calgary. The 49-year-old music teacher who has lived in the province for most of her life says she would not have bothered if her neighbor put it up a couple years ago. But now it irks her because of its widespread use by separatists. It's a weird vibe. It makes my heart sad. The Alberta flag is a hallmark of our heritage. Batchelor says she has since put up a Canadian flag in her garden. Several neighbors have followed in her footsteps, proudly displaying the maple leaf on lawns and porches. The Canadian flag people, we all kind of see each other and wave at each other on the street. There's some solidarity even in that. And the other way as well. The Alberta and Canadian flags have taken on a new meaning as the province nears a vote on whether the province should remain in Canada or hold a second binding referendum on leaving the country. Batchelor says it feels as if locals are dueling over separatism through symbols, but she's okay with that.
Yeah, and a little bit ridiculous. I mean, she's putting the Canadian flag and getting her elbows up so far up, they really can't think what's going to happen here. The Canadian economy is falling off a cliff, yet they want to stick by that Canadian flag and this idea of national socialism.
But again, also on the same point that I bring up over and over again, if someone is, number one, scared of the Alberta flag, which is your provincial flag, but also scared of maybe even displaying it, that should be an indication that something is wrong wherever you're living if you're not even allowed to put up the provincial flag of the place where you live, or maybe where you used to live, or the place you're proud of, to be proud of in. And if you're supporting a movement that actually wants to continue and make the Alberta itself great again, or better again, or actually independent and free from what the rest are trying to pull it into.
Well, what we're seeing actually happen here is the Forever Canada side, or the people that are flying these Canadian flags and getting their elbows up, are very vitriolic towards Alberta, and they do not like this symbol of freedom whatsoever.
Exactly. And again, with Bill C9 now basically in effect, and with even billboards appearing places other than the social media posts that the Edmonton police took down, it should be worrying as well that now it's up to that point. And that should also make people that might be on the fence reconsider if staying in this system that is now almost implementing and enforcing this is a good idea.
And we got a ton of stories, so let's keep it going here.
Next, Rise of Alberta says, quote, voting to stay is not the safe choice. It is a vote for more debt, more inflation, more mass immigration, and more control from Ottawa, and more of what we already have seen and continue to live under.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, like, one vote, well, now it's going to be two votes because the non-binding referendum and then the binding referendum, but two votes for freedom can change the entire future of you, your grandchildren, and your children as well. I meant children and then grandchildren.
Yourself, children and grandchildren.
So while I agree with Brett Wilson that things need to change and we need to improve the relationship, the approach that he's advocating, with all due respect, and the stay in Canada crew gets us nothing, absolutely nothing. If you vote to stay in Canada, you are saying to Mark Carney, bring on more net zero, bring on more immigration, bring on more two-tier justice. That's the message you're sending. That's the reality. You are saying, I'm absolutely fine with the status quo. And I'm not. I'm concerned about the future of our children and our grandchildren, the cost of living crisis, this reckless, out of control deficit spending that drives inflation up. Those things do not change. And they, in fact, get worse when you vote stay. those things can be changed and will be changed if you vote for option 2 on October 19th and we move.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And I will say, no matter what happens, especially with this non-binding referendum, we need to vote for option 2 here. This sends a message to Ottawa. If people vote to stay in Canada when we're just simply trying to get a message, get some sovereignty back, and you're going to see bad things happen. He's going to pull those pipelines and he's going to really come down hard on Alberta. But if we can send a message, we have not only a chance to maybe retain some of our sovereignty, but actually break free once that binding referendum comes up.
Mm-hmm. And next, on an update note, Jason Levine says, quote, unfortunately, Grand Prairie event canceled. Unfortunately, the Lessons from Quebec event scheduled for August 7th, so for Friday, in Grand Prairie has been canceled due to low interest and the continued unavailability of the Holmes family. We sincerely appreciate everyone who supported the event and planned to attend. We apologize for the inconvenience and thank you for your understanding. 4 refunds have been issued. The remaining tour events are not affected.
Yeah, and this is a shame. I really do like Maxime Bernier, but he's not a very popular figure within Alberta as a whole. I know when we interviewed him, there was a ton of pushback. That being said, I think when he's in the mix, only good things happen. The conversation is brought back to the conservative side and it's not liberalized over time. So I do like that, but he's going to be running in Alberta and maybe somebody should give him a heads up. Like he hopefully runs in the right district because as a whole in Alberta, even though I like Maxime Bernier, it seems like a lot of people in Alberta just do not like him and they have a lot of problem with politicians in general. So sometimes Max can come off as a bit of a politician and I think maybe that's what's hurting him as well as the French accent. Is kind of sorry to say that though.
And I would say, I mean, justifiably so. Having some sort of not liking politicians too much is completely justified, believe me. But I will say with Maxime and with the Conservative Party, on the other hand, it is good still to have that voice out there that has essentially been uncompromising on what he said and the platform that he's put out and put forth and displayed and hasn't changed, similar to what the Conservative Party has done and how they've liberalized, having that pushback from at least a teeny tiny party, be the PPC, is at the end of the day a good thing to also question the opposition that is supposed to be questioning those in power.
Well, and hopefully he just doesn't blindly pick Alberta and he's really thinking this thing through. Hopefully he's getting polling numbers and he's going to know the good district if he runs in that district, but also maybe realizing even if this touring campaign's not going so well, maybe a different province would be best for him overall. And I'm sorry to say it because, again, I do like Maxime Bernier, but I realize a lot of Albertans do not like him. So maybe rather than investing so much time and effort into Alberta and having a whole new ground game there, another province would be best. But
we'll see. However, we do have Matthew Rowley. We keep playing his clips because what he says, what he proposes in his constitutional proposals, we might not be in agreement with the Westminster system and basically just returning to ground zero of what got us to this place. But he does have a great metaphor in Tim Hortons. Matthew Rowley says, quote, Tim Hortons is a great metaphor for Canada. On the surface, it's all maple leaf and rah-rah Canada. Underneath, owned by a foreign company, Canada is no longer what is on the label. It has been twisted and sold out, and we need something drastic to fix that. We need Alberta independence. Funnily enough, we continue to say that, for example, here in Mexico, the Tim Hortons are very nice and very full of Canadian maple leaves and Canadian heritage and et cetera, et cetera. But when you actually go to Canada, you find a very different Tim Hortons. And I've even heard from tourists from here in Mexico that have been to the Tim Hortons here say, this is not what we expected at all of Canada and of the coffee chain.
I was thinking about Tim Hortons the other day. Tim Hortons is the quintessentially Canadian coffee and donuts shop. It's the place where you go if you want to fly the flag and see maple leafs everywhere. It's kind of the prime elbows up location these days. And yet the funny thing about Tim Hortons, it's not even Canadian anymore. It's owned as a majority stakeholder by the Brazilian American Holding Corporation from down in the States, by a Brazilian American Holding Corporation. It is foreign controlled, foreign owned, and giving its assets to a foreign country. And in a way, this speaks a lot to the problem that we have in Canada. We're all excited for things that on the label are rah-rah Canada. And yet when you scratch the surface, you find anything but in a lot of cases. Many of our federal politicians say, hooray for Canada, and yet they will turn around and call Canada a settler, genocidal, colonial state with horrible values and principles that needs to be torn down and rebuilt in their own progressive image. Many will say that they love Canada and they'll do anything for Canada, but when you look at them, they'll do anything for those who will get them votes. And when it comes to this part of Canada,
And we'll continue with this because he's making a good argument here. But I'd also say Canada is becoming Tim Hortons as a whole because of mass immigration, and not just because of mass immigration. You can potentially have immigration, but when you start prioritizing immigrants over Canadian citizens for jobs and good paying jobs with unemployment as high as it is a huge problem.
Alberta, what do we see? We see that what's on the label, we love Canada and we want to build Canada, is much different inside. As they force us to make deals, give concessions, crawl on our hands and knees to them and beg in order to build the future of our province. This is not okay. This is not what Alberta should expect. We should see the same thing on the label as is at the heart, that if people want to build Canada, they have to do it for all parts of Canada, and that includes Alberta. And this is why we're fighting for independence, because you know what? What's on the label hasn't been what's inside for a long time. This thing called Canada has been hollowed out and made a mockery. And what's remaining is just some sort of an empty hockey and maple syrup and Tim Hortons kind of Canada that doesn't actually believe in anything, value anything, or care for anyone but those that will fit the voters in Ottawa.
And I will say the National Conservatives aren't going to get behind Alberta independence at this point. But the first principles that Alberta independence holds will appeal to a lot of National Conservatives that vote for the Conservative Party. And I think they will get behind Alberta in the long run, especially leading up to that binding referendum, especially within British Columbia and Saskatchewan. Because we're not just fighting for Alberta's sovereignty, we're fighting for all of Western Canada's sovereignty and to send a message to Ottawa. And when that binding referendum rolls around, because we'll have a lot of support, I believe, in BC and Saskatchewan, you're going to see a lot of people moving to Alberta so they can vote to break free from Canada at that point.
But I will also add in that metaphor about Tim Hortons, and again, because I've had the opportunity to see other Tim Hortons around the world, it's the image that Canada also has been projecting onto the world, the propagandized image of, oh, Canada's so nice, oh, Canada's so great, oh, come live in Canada, come study in Canada, come pretend you're a refugee in Canada or asylum seeking. And then when people arrive, actually seeing what's inside and the degradation of it, that people are now also leaving, the ones that even have arrived recently.
Canada's more like little India at this point than Canada. Canada used to have an identity, used to have a culture, used to have a history, but the Liberals have torn that down for well over a decade right now. Alberta represents a lot of that history, represents a lot of those first principles, and now Canada is trying to claim that they haven't erased that history, that they love that history, that they want it back. But as soon as they can squash the Alberta independence movement, which they will not do, they're going to go right back to trying to erase that history and putting guilt and shame on their own people.
And they're going to go right back also because it is the easiest way to actually continue controlling a population by making them have no identity and nothing to stand behind or stand for. Well, then they can stand for you and you can tell them what to stand behind and even rat on their neighbors like they want to do in Edmonton. Antonio Tweed says, quote, "It's being planned as Mark Carney deliberately sinking the Canadian economy." And this is something we even touted a few months ago, saying, well, it kind of seems like it's also what he did in the UK at one point when he was governor of the Bank of England.
Well, not everybody in Canada is going to go broke here, but the working class families are. The heart of what Canada should be is going to go broke once the dollar collapses, and it looks like they're preparing for that. The people that will be living high on the hog in Canada are the ones that have all their money tied up in international investments, especially within the U.S. And who are one of those people? Mark Carney himself.
The prime example of that.
The drop of the dollar, it almost seems like it's being planned to lower the dollar. It'll be immense pain for the Canadian public, It'll be a boon to corporations that export, that pay in Canadian wages and sell in American dollars. It'll be a great thing for them. It'll be like awesome. A weak Canadian dollar basically puts Canada on sale. So it'll benefit the few. That's the thing that we share all the time. It'll benefit the few, the elite, and it'll be immense pain for the rest of the population. I mean, I'm talking immense pain. I mean, talking about inflation. The drop of the dollar, it almost seems...
Yeah, and absolutely fantastic analysis there. And we've been talking a lot about this, and it looks like the collapse of the Canadian dollar will be coming at some point here. The Japan is in big trouble as well. The difference between Japan and Canada is the United States is actually going to float Japan, or at least try to float Japan, because it has a huge impact on their economy. The Canadian dollar dropping will only benefit the United States if it drops and the economy collapses, because the United States companies and the United States will come in there and buy up a lot of the corporations for pennies on the dollar.
And I mean, we're already seeing it go down and worrying numbers in places where even the propagandist machine of the CBC and the rest of the mainstream media don't really know how to put it out there so people don't panic, because
well, you're seeing the
we're
stock
about
market.
there.
You're seeing the stock market short the Canadian dollar even more than the Japanese dollar. And why? Because Canada doesn't have somebody to bail them out like Japan did with the United States.
But now let's go back to your comments and then we'll get into Alberta politics. Wild Rose Republic of Alberta, hello, says, elbows up, way up the clacker. And Pete Griswold says, the problem is not necessarily the mainstream media like CBS. It's a boomer watch. It's a boomer watch, and the only way to boost their ratings is by importing the third. People from other places, if the Liberals didn't cheat, they wouldn't be trying.
Well, they got their elbows up. They're going to be digging their graves with their elbows pretty soon here.
Teresa Freedom says, went to the event with Maxime Bernier in Calgary last night. It was very good. Glad. I'm glad that one did go through as well.
I'm glad to hear that. And I really hope Maxine is successful, and I hope he does garner support in Alberta. But I'm just saying, based upon our interactions with our audience, some people do like him. I like him, but we had a lot of pushback against Maxime Bernier specifically. But he does have some support from some bigger creators like Jason Levine, like us. So. Yeah.
Michael Drader, hello, says there's a Sing Hortons in Panama damn near the puked at the site, especially with such great coffee blends in Panama. Well, the fact that, they decided that was a good idea to have that instead of a local coffee. Sean, hello, Sean, says, is Mexico City also smoky? Guy, been coughing up both lungs for the last 3 days.
No, but there is a ton of pollution here. And when I say pollution, this isn't like normal cities. It is a massive wave of smog. I've also lived in Los Angeles, California, which has a lot of smog. It does not compare to Mexico City. It's immense. Some days there's pollution warnings here where they ask you not to go outside. You can still go outside. I do. I don't care. But you can feel it in your lungs, literally.
And I think you also choke when you drink coffee or whatever you're drinking. Sean says, why is Carney trying to learn how to eat an apple like Pierre in your picture for today, guys? You're the one that makes the thumbnail, so why?
Because grocery prices, grocery stores, and the dollar is going to absolute hell. And he's trying to act like, oh, it's business as normal in Canada. They're just eating an apple, not having a care in the world. That's his attitude right now. The world's collapsing for regular Canadians, but for people like him, he's living high on the horse with his U.S. investments.
Sean also says, Zincs is just a forest fire smoke. I blame climate change. Then I asked Grok, and Grok told me it isn't climate change, but Oregon political incompetence.
Yeah,
Grok knows.
There's a lot of things going down in Washington State, and it's being exposed to be homeless encampments. Arsonists are being arrested as well. So what they originally tried to blame on forest fires seems to be very, very organized, and it seems to be going right around a major city of Spokane. In 3 different locations, literally starting to engulf the city. And it just happens that Spokane was tagged by Davos and the WEF as one of those new smart cities.
Of course.
And there's a lot of smart cities that are starting to burn to the ground worldwide. And I wonder why. They want a blank canvas to build on.
Sean also says, Japanese yen guy. Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
I usually don't. Sean says, dude, what dude has a name like Maxime? He's kind of,
well, it's French, and he does have a French accent. But I will say his fundamental first principles that I do like.
William Rebell asks us, did you see the clip of Glenn Beck on Liz Wheeler's show? Yes, we played it yesterday.
Absolutely.
If that's the one you mean. But
yeah.
And Pete says we have the equivalent of a Boeing 747 dropping people that want to come live here every 2 hours, just on a larger border than the beach on a Spanish territory. And with less people actually caring or even going there and noticing what's happening. Yeah,
and we did play that Glenn Beck interview yesterday, and Tuesdays, Thursdays, we cover a lot more U.S. politics. The show's called American Greatness, but we weave in a lot of Alberta independence talk, hopefully to educate an American audience to kind of build a bridge and support between Alberta and the United States, because although we want to be our own independent country, our major trading partner and the people we want good relations with are the country to our south, and that is the U.S. We should start building those bridges now. and especially with the midterms coming up and the 2028 election being so crucial.
Option Trader says, if CO2 is so bad, why does Carney want to pump it into the ground? The entire globe pumps water into oil wells when they start to lose pressure. I'm not smart, but water seems safer than toxic gas.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that make you scratch your head, like the Canadian government dropping glyphosate all over the forest, which is just turning the forest too tender. And then they say, oh, forest fires are worse than ever. Yeah, I wonder why.
Rocking Around Hello says, hey, Nat and the guy, it's been a while. Lots of support for Alberta independence.
Absolutely.
And William Robel says, when I lived in central New York, Tim Hortons closed all of its stores, restaurants locally.
Oh, wow.
And again, it's because it's not the greatest when there's other kinds of competition, and it's not just propped up because of the history behind it and the ex-pride that people used to have in places like Tim Hortons, even within Canada. I mean, here people go, but it's not like people do prefer Starbucks, for example.
Well, it's what it is here, and I think what it is around the world, and what's Tim Hortons has become outside of Canada is a novelty. I used to go to this little Japanese restaurant that was decorated like a pirate ship with wooden walls and things like that. And I went there not because the sushi was good, but because it was a novelty. And that's what Tim Hortons is around the world. It's just Canadian flags all over the place. A lot of people have traveled to Canada or lived in Canada for a little while and come back to Mexico and other countries. And they just like to think back on their time in Canada. It's a novelty store. Now in Canada, it's a little bit different. I would say it's just the cheapest coffee in town. That's why people go there. As much as I didn't like it, I was broke when I was living in Canada, so I would go.
Yeah. William Ravel says, Canada does have a culture. You can find it on the streets of places like Delhi, Bombay, and Calcutta.
Well, yeah, you are right there, I think.
Option Trader says it's easier to accept incompetence because malice is too frightening to accept that your leaders is or are trying to hurt you in real life.
Well,
and it creates a cognitive dissonance of you also being told by the arms that they have of propaganda that it's not happening and it's not true.
Yeah, and it's both parties. It's leader after leader after leader. And they try to guilt and shame Albertans into saying, well, you keep ousting these leaders. You keep giving us globalists that talk a good game in the beginning and then flip on us like a Jason Kenney, like a Danielle Smith. Alberta's the only one with the balls and the backbone to actually get rid of them when they expose their true colors.
And also, like what should happen in a democracy where it is the citizens that choose.
Yeah.
And if it's not good enough for the citizens, if the hired help is not good enough, well, then you change it.
Yeah, and the thing is, we still have the power to change it, but you let the federal government keep federalizing Canada, soon we won't even have the option to oust these premiers when it's time.
True. I'll continue reading the comments after the next segment, but let's go to Alberta politics.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And let's start with this from Millennial Grump. I almost said group. Says, quote, remember when Canada was a nice place to live? Now buses drive around with the see hate, report hate on them.
Yeah, they said
that they weren't going to do.
They said they were going to take it down. They took it down off, I believe, their Facebook account, but they left it up on some of their other accounts. And next thing we know, we see a bus wrapped in this. I consider this hate speech from the federal government. Can I call the line and report the federal government for hating on freedom here?
Yep, true. Exactly.
There was something else that happened with the story that was very interesting. The pleb actually tried to call the hotline and it was down. I think either liberals are getting triggered and they're calling on people in Alberta about Albertan flags maybe, or people are just flooding the hotline. This was the tactic in the UK when they put hotlines up like this and they asked people to report their neighbor. They flooded the lines. Massive arrests were made, but eventually they had to shut down those hotlines because there was just too many calls coming in that they couldn't follow up on.
Because again, this is ridiculous. And the fact that we are being told that, number one, it's been taken down, don't worry about it. But then number two, that in a place like Alberta, Edmonton itself, they're the ones that created this whole story and made this into a bigger thing than it is and then try to take it down. Well, with a premier that also seems to be flip-flopping a lot lately, Juno News says, quote, months before Edmonton police urged residents to report online hate, Premier Danielle Smith vowed Alberta wouldn't enforce laws targeting lawful speech, saying if the intention is to do what we're seeing in the UK, we're just not enforcing that. And yet, look at the posts, look at the taking down of all of that as well.
So we're not quite at the stage where I guess the police are enforcing it, but they're at the stage where they're asking the citizens to enforce it and rat on their neighbors. This is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that Danielle Smith, and we showed the interview on Monday's show where she said this statement and she goes, well, we won't enforce things like this. What's happening is she's taking one stance, making an Alberta constitution, and then federal laws and mechanisms are taking or trumping local laws and things like that. So it seems like federal law is taking precedent over provincial law, which is absolutely disgusting, especially under this progressive liberal government.
But also essentially proving the point that everybody within Alberta independence and that wants to see an independent Alberta is saying that even though we get told or we even try to stop things like this and insane laws that do and continue to get passed and enforced in the rest of Canada, well, Alberta can stay sovereign within a united Canada. No, it can't, because clearly there's people and intentions and even maybe enforcement from up on high that tell the mechanisms and those within Alberta that do have the power that they do have to enforce it. And we've seen it over and over again also in the examples that Danielle Smith has given us.
Yeah, I would guess if Alberta stayed with inside Canada, you have 24 to 36 months before that. What glimmer of sovereignty you have left is absolutely taken and federalized by the federal government, whether that's private property rights, natural resources, or other things. Mark Carney is currently building the mechanisms we pointed out every show to take freedoms and take sovereignty away from provinces and away from citizens.
But the federal government shouldn't worry too much because there's a bunch of new compliant students that will be coming in because they're requesting them.
Well, and I do apologize about the audio on this clip, but it is crucially important that we at least try to hear this, because what they're putting out to Indian students is completely different to what they're preaching to the general public. Also, if you read in the documents, 2027 and 2028 are going to be massive years for mass immigration in Canada. And this is another reason Alberta needs to get out now and have that binding referendum in a quick fashion before we're absolutely flooded with mass immigration, and they speed up the process from PR to citizenship, so they have a new voting bloc to vote against independence.
Canada Proud says, quote, Chris Cooter, Mark Carney's High Commissioner in India, says that Canada had imposed a cap on international students because we had a housing crisis. But he says the housing crisis is now solved. Let us all know, everybody that is over there right now, if you feel like it's been solved, and that we are welcoming back international students. What do you make of his comments?
Excellency, talking about the educational partnership now, we know that Indian students have traditionally preferred Canada as a preferred destination. What is the message that you want to give to the Indian students amid changing visa policies and immigration?
I'm glad you asked me that question. And the reason is that there is a kind of misperception in India that Canada is shutting the doors. That is not at all the case. It's true that a couple of years ago we did impose a cap because we had issues. There simply wasn't enough housing. There were some fly-by-night colleges. We wanted to clean that up. But we've done that. And now we host 400,000 students in Canada. That's more than the EU, UK, and Australia combined. It's more than the US hosts. So yes, you are very, very welcome as students and parents and students. Please do consider Canada. We think that we provide a very high quality education, whether that's university or polytechnic, we call them colleges. We think that that's at least equal to anywhere else in the world. And as you know, many of our universities, for example, are in the top 100. I think Yale University of Toronto in the top 20 or so. So you've got high quality education. It's a safe and welcoming environment. And I think most people that go do have a very, very good experience. So my message is your number one, students are welcome. We haven't even reached those caps. So actually, this is probably the best time ever to apply as an Indian student because we want you there.
And that right there, he gave away the game. Now is the best time ever because we're going to open up the floodgates is what he means to say. And I really do apologize about the audio. I wish it was a lot better. And I think this is why a lot of other news shows that are conservative based aren't showing this clip was because of the audio. But he's revealing what's going to be coming to Canada, massive amounts of Indian students. And what do we know about students in Canada? They immediately are going to start applying for citizenship either during or after their schooling.
And if Canada, not, they'll make a protest where they hunger strike and yet they eat right after.
And there's space in these camps. But when we come to the question of visas, people, tell us all about that. Both the business people and the students tell us about the problems they have with getting a visa. It seems inconsistent or it takes too long. And I can tell you that as a result of the Prime Minister's visit here only 2.5 months ago, we're actively at work on fixing those problems, making the experience much better for the students.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And what did he say there at the end? He said, because of Mark Carney's visit there, and what have I been pointing out about that visit when he went to India? He was trying to get investment for Canada, and in in return, he offered to take hundreds of thousands of Indian students. And I think there's another layer and another mechanism there is that we'll take them as students and then we'll give them citizenship afterwards. And another Indian delegate came over to Canada. We showed this clip as well saying, Canada's currently at 40 million. You want to be at 100 million. India can help you accomplish that. The government may want to get to 100 million. The citizens were happy back at 30 million.
And again, it's insane that they're saying, or he was saying there, that, oh, we can increase the caps now that we had on students for about a year and a half while Justin Trudeau promised it. And then Mark Carney kind of implemented it while he opened the floodgates on another side. And while people were noticing that there is more asylum seekers and refugees now that are coming in and, funnily enough, also studying and also taking spots that students weren't supposed to take. But is the housing fixed? Is anything fixed? Is infrastructure fixed? Is healthcare? Is anything fixed to the point that Canada can now start bringing in more and more people and inviting them to come in through the front door?
Well, Mark Carney again announced a ton of rental units, billions of dollars being invested in more rental units. He is turning Canada into a renter's society. He is hollowing out the middle class and getting rid of home ownership, not just because he's building rental units, but because of the attack on private property rights from the provincial level, the international level with the UN and UNDRIP, and the federal level with the 30 by 30 program. It's a full-on assault in Canada for private property rights, and Americans need to start paying attention, because if the DSA gets in the United States, they're going to follow that exact same roadmap, especially in blue states.
And lastly, let's go to this from Jeff Rath. Says, quote, if anybody doesn't think that this is a massive problem for Alberta, you aren't paying attention. Danielle Smith needs to resign.
Yeah, it's time for Danielle Smith to go. And I'm not mincing my words here. I've used this photo as our thumbnail before. It's much better with the heart there, I'd say, because it really catches the energy of the moment and what's happening in Canada right now.
And again, it just goes to further prove that maybe she does have sights set on Ottawa and she does know what's best for her and forgot a while ago what was best for the people that voted her in and the province itself.
She knows what she's doing. She's a politician through and through, and she's going to promote what's going to help her get where she wants to get. What she wanted before was to be the premier of Alberta. What's suiting her now and her talking points and her supposed first principles that can shift on a dime are going to get her to Ottawa, or at least that's what she's thinking. But we need to keep putting pressure on her to get her to step down on her own for the good of her own political career if she does want to make it to Ottawa.
But now let's go back to your comments and then we'll get into Alberta personalities. Yeah. Start with, hold on, I found it. There it is. Let's start with this from John Bolton. Hello, John. Thank you for being here. Says, I was at Jason's event last night with Maxime. I interviewed him. He was very like
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the content creators really do like Maxime Bernier. I like him as well. Jason likes him as well. I'm glad to hear John Bolton kind of standing up for him. Hopefully there's going to be a spot for him within Alberta. I really, really hope so. I can only say, of all the interviews that we had done, Maxime Bernier was the one interview we got the most pushback against, saying they didn't want him in Alberta. And I pushed back against that at the time. And I'll continue to push back, saying I like him. But I guess it's up to Albertans. And hopefully he is paying attention to polling. So if he does decide to run in Alberta, which he has indicated, he runs in the right district or spot.
But again, I fully understand the distrust of politicians and specifically career politicians, which Max has now become. Sean says, Carney is shorting the Canadian dollar, but of course he is. And also says, didn't Wendy's or Burger King own Tim Hortons, or maybe both at different times? I think maybe at different times, but now it is owned by a Brazilian company.
Yeah. And I will say,
all of them.
If you're not subscribed to John Bolton, you should do so. He is one of the critical thinkers within Alberta independence, and I watch him on a daily basis. Matter of fact, I'm trying to start to shoot videos, and I'm trying to watch a lot of John Bolton's videos for inspiration.
Mm-hmm. And hold on. Sean says, Occam's razor can be wrong sometimes. But I don't know if he was replying to someone or just saying that for saying it. But next, William Babel says, it now takes more than $1.40 to buy one of our US dollars.
Yeah, and that's not, it's going to go way down. I think the cliff is right there. People are shorting it. I think, when the dollar falls off a cliff, you're going to see the U.S. come in there and buy up a lot of these Canadian companies and relocate the headquarters probably to the United States, would be my guess. And the people that are going to get hurt are your average people, your families, your blue collar workers, your farmers. Who's not going to get hurt are people like Mark Carney that have their money stashed in the United States or offshore, not in Canadian dollars.
The MP Mooney says independence is not the same as freedom. Alberta would still depend on foreign markets, pipelines, currency, defense, and political allies. Separation would give Albertans more power, or simply transfer that power to Washington, corporations, and a new political class.
It depends how you arrange your constitution when that point comes. And this is why I'm really in favor of Bruce Party's constitution. I think it maximizes freedom. That being said, any of the three constitutions proposed, even the one that I don't like that goes back to the Westminster system, is still a reset on that system and would be better than where Canada's at. That being said, I would much rather see the US one or Bruce Party's. Now, I understand Bruce Party's proposal for a constitution is the most risky because it hasn't been tried, but it does maximize freedom. I'm perfectly happy with a US style constitution, especially if it's rolled back to the 1776 style version.
Option Trader says Brookfield, under former CEO Carney, exchanged Canadian dollars for US dollars. That's effectively a short sale, i.e. betting that the Canadian dollar goes down in value. As a currency exchange, it's very easy to hide.
Yeah.
And we talked about it when he was basically doing it also right before he was selected, I will say. Rockin' Around says, there's a guy named John Bolton in the chat. He is favorite daily channel for me. Keep doing it, John. Yes, and same here.
Yeah.
And I also love his voice and his humor. He has very similar humor
Well,
to what makes me laugh.
He did a great job organizing that telethon that raised a ton of money for Alberta independence. So thank you to John for doing that. It was a lot of work behind the scenes. I know the audience doesn't get to see it, but we participated in that. And man, John did a fantastic job with that thing.
Yes. And thank you for having us as well and inviting us. Pete says, every politician had some acting lesson or learned the hard way. And last one, Option Trader says, Brookfield, as a publicly traded company, had to file financial documents for fiscal 2024. Carney spent 12 months as Brookfield's CEO shorting the Canadian dollar. Your media won't touch that. It's a hidden move.
Yeah. And we've been talking a little bit about that here or there. So people are starting to wake up to this.
But now let's go into Alberta personalities.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start with this from Jasmine Lane saying, quote, according to polls, anywhere from 68 to 80% of people support government enforcing quote unquote hate speech laws. Of course, when it's those laws that they're enforcing that benefit them. But if they were against, I don't know, communism or speech saying that socialism is great, I don't know if they'd be as happy with that.
And this is why Canada is absolutely cooked, because the people themselves want to enforce laws like this. They want to vote for things like this. This is why you have buses wrapped and report your neighbor hate speech hotlines. Absolutely ridiculous. This doesn't fly in Alberta like it flies in the rest of the country, and that's why Alberta does want independence. But when you have more and more mass immigration coming into Alberta, the voter bloc will eventually change. And this is why we need independence now before it does.
Take my kids to a new dentist and I walk in and see Bibles on the tables everywhere. And I go to the reception counter and say, hey, what's with all the Bibles everywhere? And they said, oh, they're just there. And I said, I need to cancel my appointment. I'm not playing games anymore. This is not a Christian nation.
I mean, for starters, actually, both America and Canada are Christian nations in their founding. It's in their charters and stuff. But anyway.
You don't need to have Bibles out everywhere in your office. Or you can, and I won't patronize it. So don't tell me that queer people are trying to shove their agenda down people's throats when everywhere I go, there's Bibles around, there's people let me pray for you. Don't give me that shit. I'm done.
Sorry, committed against a person or property, motivated in whole or in part by hate, bias, or prejudice towards a group based on national, ethnic, or religion. So hate crime, I guess.
Yeah, just holding your beliefs or just having a Bible is enough to trigger these people now. And it's absolutely ridiculous, because I actually took a story out from today where businesses within, I think it was Calgary and Edmonton, now can apply for stickers to put on their doors. So they're rainbow friendly, things like this. Like, if people want to have Bibles, they want to have Bibles. And if they want rainbow stickers, they want rainbow stickers. But being triggered like that, it's a little bit ridiculous.
But it's also insane how far the Canadian education system has fallen. And for a while now, because she didn't look like such a spry young chicken, and when she went to high school that short time ago, since the education system, we have been looking at it. But what's insane is that Canada has a king, King Charles. King Charles is a Christian king who is selected by God to be king, by a Christian God as well. So it's insane to me that doesn't cross their minds either, but they're willing to live under that kind of system.
If you believe the propaganda, you would believe King Charles is Christian. There are rumors he's actually Muslim.
Well, they're supposed to believe the propaganda.
That being said, King Charles is the globalist through and through, and that's why Alberta does not want a king anymore. Just like the United States broke free from that system, Alberta now wants to break free. Canada can stay in it, and we're going to see where they head if they do so.
Insane people. But next, National Post says, quote, talk of conservative, quote, infighting misses the bigger story. The party is messily reinventing itself.
Yeah, and I think
putting its elbows up.
Well, and I think what's going to happen here, because you see a lot of infighting with the Jason Kenney, Doug Ford side trying to take Pierre Poilievre's spot. That's not going to happen. Poilievre is a very popular leader, and although he's against Alberta independence, and I don't necessarily like him, he's probably the best you're going to get for a leader with inside Canada. He's not a good leader inside of Alberta, and neither is Danielle Smith. But that being said, I think Jason Kenney and Doug Ford will absolutely try to destroy the Conservative Party in order to get rid of Pierre Poilievre because he is so strong. And I think a compromise candidate would be a Danielle Smith there, especially because she's shown an ability to negotiate with Mark Carney as well as people from the United States, whether it's going down to see Donald Trump or getting the large investment from Meta. So she can appeal to female voters. She can rebrand herself as, look, I can negotiate with both sides. I have a proven track record of that. Poilievre doesn't have that, although I do like Poilievre. I could see them compromising on a Danielle Smith, saying she can maybe get a better tariff deal than Mark Carney or a Pierre Poilievre could at this point.
Because with Poilievre, a lot of people can continue to say kind of what I've said. What has he actually done? What has he actually shown and proven? And now Danielle Smith, as Premier of Alberta, has been able to prove and show that she has done some things at least, and she can list them off.
Well, what I would say is Danielle Smith is basically Pierre Poilievre in a dress, but there's one difference, and that's her resume, which she's shown she can negotiate with both sides, whether that's Donald Trump, Meta, or Mark Carney. So having those couple things on her resume, I think I could see her being that compromise candidate and taking Poilievre's spot. And that's good for Alberta because that would mean she sees the path and she could naturally step down in Alberta and we wouldn't have to oust her like we did Jason Kenney.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, speaking of Jason Kenney, the Globe and Mail says, quote, it's an opinion saying Jason Kenney is trying to stop the separatists, but he deserves some blame for their rise in the first place.
Oh, God, Jason Kenney is just so irrelevant at this point. The fact that him and Doug Ford are plotting behind the scenes with their campaign manager, Corey Tonight, to oust Pierre Poilievre is just absolutely crazy. I'm not a Pierre Poilievre fan. He does not support Alberta independence. But again, he's the best you're going to get as a leader. Somebody that's similar to him is a Danielle Smith with maybe a little bit better of a negotiating resume. So if Poilievre is replaced, which I hope maybe he's not. Danielle Smith is, I would say, the hopeful choice because if you get a Jason Kenney or a Doug Ford in there, Canada becomes an outwardly uniparty country. The Liberals look no difference than the Conservatives at that point.
Which is what they want because it makes it easier. But it's also, I mean, I haven't even read this article, but other than the headline, but I can pretty much guess that it's because of the Jibby Jab era, the truckers convoy, and saying that he is the one that also helped provoke all these people. But it was a grassroots movement of Alberta independence also being an idea in a lot of Albertans' minds since the 1900s, since it essentially became a province and people said, this is not what we wanted, this is not the deal we wanted, and we were kind of forced into becoming a province with the delineations that the federal government wanted or the Laurentian elites wanted.
Well, every politician that wants to gain power within Alberta sees the UCP and they say, I can use that as my mechanism. How am I going to do it? I'm going to act like I'm really based. Once I get power, once I'm elected, then I'll set my sights on Ottawa and I'll start moderating myself. And the people aren't going to have it in Alberta. And that's why these politicians keep getting ousted. And I say we're going to keep doing it until we get one that isn't going to flip like a fish on a dock.
But now let's go back to your comments and then we'll get into Alberta's Canada. Sean says, love my Crown Royal. Is it not enough that I lost my wonderful Russian standard vodka? I miss you, Russian standard. It's been 10 years since I even remember. Sean says, and 7 and 7 was my standard drink since Russian standard is gone. Now tariffs, so I'm going to gin and tonic. And hold on, says Canadian whiskey is so smooth, I don't like American bourbon. Says Sean as well. Todd says, same Pete. Michael Drader says, love to be a CPC member when Danielle runs. My mic drop moment will be, you'll fit in well with the snot. You'll well adapt to at crossing the floor now. Like not well adapted, adapt at talking apparently today. Sean says, Danielle isn't completely ugly. I could fix her. Don't try. Sean says, Jumbolne, sort of unfortunate name to Walrus Man, but different country, so I guess it doesn't matter then. Yes, Jumbolne does have a very similar name to another politician in the US with very different ideas, and that's not very well liked, but it's completely different. This is John R. Bolton from Alberta. Michael Drader says, Oilfield has a great saying, snitches get stitches. And Sean says, oh man, that lady I never heard of, Jehovah's Witnesses, leaving Bibles and etc. And Watchtowers and Awake magazines. With all the magazine theft, when I was younger, it was the only thing to read at the doctor's office sometimes. Yes, I remember when the old ladies would like bring the magazines with them home from the doctor's offices.
Well, the way they're attacking Christianity in Canada right now is absolutely ridiculous, especially when they're going the other way with the MAID program and so many other things. I mean, it's becoming extreme at this point.
His one from Michael Drader is funny. He says, at this point, I'd vote for gum disease over Poilievre or Kenny or Ford or Smith.
Yeah.
Or any of them. That's the issue. Independence. Vote for independence. That's all I can say at this point.
Well, and that's the thing. There's no politician within Canada that represents Alberta as a people and the independence movement. And that's why we're faced with independence at this point, because there's no way to fix that rotten system of Canada.
William Rebell says, right now there's a standoff at the Alberta Premier's offices where the police have showed up due to the volume of calls pointing out the hate coming from her office towards Albertans.
Fantastic.
I like the sarcasm there. William Rebell says, I have several bottles of Crown Royal here in my bar. I haven't had a drink in a couple years due to medicine interactions, but I love it. I also have a nice couple bottles of Canadian Club VO. And now the Americans won't be able to enjoy it, as Sean was saying. Reckon Around says, we have a major DOT problem in Canada already. Indian being tired of them is real. Because if I say it another way, YouTube won't like it. Hold on. Option Trader says, I've seen this playbook for decades. Danielle Smith is working against you and will sabotage you until she's voted out. Pierre will never support you. He is also a federalist. Carney will sabotage you. Canada is not economically viable without Alberta.
Yeah, and that's what I've been saying for months now. Before it was, I think, mainstream within Alberta independence to say it. I got a lot of pushback for it, but people are waking up now. And I'm glad I stuck to that line. I'm glad people are waking up in Alberta. And the one good thing about Alberta independence compared to Quebec or these other independence movement is this is a grassroots movement led by the people, not the politicians. There's not a politician on our side. The elites are over there, all holding hands, singing Kumbaya, or the citizens are over here attempting to break free. And one of the big components is the United States. Donald Trump, hopefully we get a J.D. Vance in 2028. It may come down to a result after a non-binding referendum and then a binding referendum. Canada is going to try to play some hocus pocus saying, oh no, you can't separate. The UCP ultimately can try to veto this thing. And at that point, we're going to need somebody to declare unilateral independence. And if we do that, we're going to need a country to recognize us. That country is going to hopefully be the United States. And that's why we're pressing for J.D. Vance in 2028 in case this referendum process takes longer than expected.
Option Trader also says, Alberta will economically collapse. Yes, and they know it very well. It says, Smith, Pierre, Carney, and every conservative will fight independence tooth and nail. Are you ready for that? And also takes away the majority of their voters. And they also know that Alberta is the strongest conservative stronghold within Canada. So they're going to lose them all.
Well, yeah, and they're like, Canada's going to collapse. The politicians don't care because they get paid double what they do in the United States, and that's in Canadian dollars.
But now let's go into Alberta's Canada and then to see the collapse, and then I'll continue reading your comments.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
And let's start with this from Juno News. Says, quote, Ottawa scrapped the digital services tax, dropped key streaming rules, rolled back most counter tariffs, and agreed to share the Gordie Howe Bridge revenues with the U.S. When asked what Canada received in turn, Mark Carney didn't identify a single reciprocal concession from the United States.
Well, and it's getting worse now today. They understand this deadline's coming up on the 19th of this month, and a lot of it has to do with steel tariffs and other things. And what Mark Carney wants to do here is say, well, take down the 50% tariff you're threatening and just put a cap on the steel and aluminum. And this is going to cap how large businesses can get in Canada. This is a bad deal and hurts Canadian businesses overall. So as far as Mark Carney being some kind of master negotiator, he seems to be the exact opposite, unless he's actually negotiating on the United States' behalf in order to collapse Canada. And every day it looks more and more like that might be the case.
Or if that collapse actually benefits him, either to instill some sort of universal basic income to continue to further control the population and put rules around it, or to get people to continue to demand more and more from the government, which again gives those at the top more and more control. So, and he saw it kind of work in the UK as well. But next, Gen Xer says, quote, the Liberals and Carney keep bragging about record foreign investment, 96.8 billion. Sounds impressive until you look under the hood.
Yeah, and this was a very interesting clip. And not just this clip, the 96 billion, it could have been hundreds of billions of dollars. There's $250 billion right now ready to be invested in the United States in mining. They primarily, I think, want to invest that in Canadian mining, mainly Alberta and British Columbia. The problems, the regulations are too high. So now they're having to invest in Africa and other high risk areas. Also, there was $70 billion from the Middle East ready to come in Canada. Again, Carney turned the majority of that money away. There's money ready to be invested in Canada, and Carney's literally turning it away, I think, because he's trying to nationalize different sectors by keeping high regulations and making the federal government the only investor or the only option.
When the federal government boasts about record-breaking foreign direct investment, they're not lying. They're just not telling you the whole truth. Now, the headline number is actually impressive. In 2025, Canada reported $96.8 billion in foreign direct investment, and the government celebrates this as proof that global investors are betting on Canada. They point to the per capita numbers. Canada leads the G7. We're fourth globally. The message is clear. Yeah, Canada is open for business, but here's what the headlines don't tell you, and this is quite concerning. Nearly half of that $96.8 billion wasn't foreign companies building new factories or even creating jobs. It was foreign companies buying Canadian companies that already existed. Same buildings, same equipment, same workers, often fewer after the layoff comes, just new foreign owners. So I want you to think about that. Rio Tinto buying Arcadian Lithium, UK private equity firm scooping up Canadian tech companies, Mexican mining giant Fresnillo buying Probe Gold. These are ownership transfers, not economic growth. Now, StatsCan breaks FDI into three categories: mergers and acquisitions, reinvested earnings, and greenfield investment. Now, only one category, greenfield, represents actual new productive capacity, new factories, new equipment, new jobs. In 2024, mergers and acquisitions accounted for 49% of all FDI inflows. Greenfield investment, just 22.6%, less than a quarter. So the thesis is very straightforward. Canada's FDI numbers are a statistical illusion that masks a structural capital exodus. The record foreign investment celebrated by politicians.
Yeah, and this was very interesting, especially with the collapse of the Canadian dollar on the horizon there. This is going to cause massive foreign investment coming in, not as investment, but to buy up Canadian companies. Canadian companies will just be shell companies at that point.
Do you want me to keep playing it?
No, that's good.
Okay. Sorry, we have a flickering light that's been flickering since the thunder, and it's distracting me. No, leave it. There we go. Thank you. And now let's go to, I saw this story and I told the guy that we had to add it. Angela Unspoken says, quote, Census Canada came to my door Sunday. They knocked quite loudly and then tried to open the door before leaving another census card behind. This video is unbelievable to watch. Had my door not been locked, they would have clearly opened it. And this is a lady coming from the government to, quote unquote, help you. And now they're coming in even without you letting them come in.
Why are you in my house? Why are you in my house? This is breaking into my house. I'm sorry. No, get out. I'll call the cops. sorry. I'm gonna call the cops. It's breaking and entering. No, I don't care.
I'm from the government.
Why didn't she walk off the property at that point? She's still on the property and she still has the door open, like she doesn't actually want to fully leave the house and shut the door.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care.
It's for the census.
I don't care.
You haven't finished your, like, you haven't completed your census.
When I get a written agreement that my information is not being sold off to other third-party information. Oh no, what's going on with the whole pump? It literally says on the website that they're selling our information. Get out of my house. I'm gonna call the cops. I literally have you on video. Okay? Get out of my house. Get out of my house. I'm not refusing. When you can show me a piece of paper.
Well, and there's another insidious part here. Why are they sending people out if they don't want to sign the census? Then they don't have to sign the census. There can be a fine or something like that. But this isn't the first video we've seen like that. This is the first time they were actually fully in the house. But there was the other one where the gentleman came up, knocked on the door. He says, "No, I'm not signing." He goes, "Well, there's going to be a fine for that." And then he gave a smug comment. He goes, "Give me the fine."
Mm-hmm.
People don't trust the government in Canada anymore. And this is just another example of that.
Because as the lady whose house got intruded into was saying, how can you ensure to me that they're not going to be selling off my information to either companies or who knows who else?
Well, and if you continue that video, we'll leave it now, but she had a badge around the neck. You could see it under her shirt. She kind of pushed it towards her, but it was backwards. And then when she asked for it, she refused to give it because she knew she was going to be in serious shit there. She should have never been in the house, period.
And I wonder now if they get told to get that information as any way they can, or why was she so willing to enter someone's property? Or maybe just in her head, that's not wrong.
Well, I would guess
because there's no Canadian.
You could have a couple things here. If she was a process of mass immigration, maybe she doesn't have the same understanding of don't come into somebody's house. Number one, I don't know if that's the case. But number two, maybe it's like the parking meter attendants within Vancouver, and you get an actual fee for every parking ticket that you give out.
But also, once again, another example of very, very small people given a tiny, tiny bit of power and then thinking that they can run over the world or take into your house or get into your house without permission. And also, once again, Canada doesn't allow you to protect yourself and your property.
Yeah.
And they've made that incredibly clear. But next, National Post says, quote, Canadian provinces pay their politicians twice what American states do, study fines.
Yeah, and I just brought this up, and we don't have to go into the article, but I read the article, and it's all in the same dollars. So Canadian politicians were around $120,000, while American politicians were at about $58,000 Canadian. So just very interesting. I mean, I guess Canada is working for the politicians. It's just not working for the working class, families, or farmers, or the demographic a country should work for. It's working for economists, people that have their money offshores and things like that.
And what kind of economies and policies that countries implement mirror that what's already happening in Canada? Communism and socialism, but communism, where the ones at the top are the only ones that do benefit from having that system. But lastly, Juno News says, quote, even people who stand to benefit most from the Carney government's proposed $90 billion Alto high-speed rail project aren't sold on it. Privy Council research found many Ontarians and Quebecers see the mega project as too costly and unnecessary. And it could, at one point, I don't even know if anymore, but it could have paid all of Canada's debt, but no, let's use it for a train nobody wants.
This is the gravy train, and the fact that they're canceling an airport in Toronto, which is actually potentially needed, but they're keeping this thing going even though there's so much resistance on it for every level. Why? Because any kind of train that is built, whether it's in California or other places in the West, you see money just disappear. It's a money laundering scheme.
And it's funny because I was just going to mention not just California, but one of the big, infamous projects from our former president and the current administration here in Mexico, the insane lefty quasi-communists that we have, was a train called the Tren Maya, where money just disappeared. And of course, the corruption was blatantly obvious because most people here know to distrust the government anyways. But in Canada, and even in California, I don't think it would be so hard to find the mechanisms of corruption also put into the tracks. Literally.
Well, if the amount of money that has already disappeared into the Canadian space program has disappeared, I can only imagine what's going to happen to this train. It's going to cost more than a space shuttle.
Carney's little red rocket. But now let's go back to your comments and then we'll get into Alberta and the world. Sean says they stole the magazines in Mexico too.
Nothing.
Oh, they still have magazines at the hospitals in Mexico too. What was up with that? I haven't read a Watchtower in like 15 years, thanks to the phones, but not a terrible magazine. It says no master negotiator, but master currency manipulator.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what Mark Carney is at this point.
Sean also says, which was also weird, says Carney told the UAE to go pound sand. Kind of weird, but not really.
Well, also, if there is a massive structural issue with the Canadian dollar and things like that, I could definitely see them using that as an excuse to bring in the digital currency. Having the Canadian dollar work as an outward currency, keep it low so they can export on a cheap level because the low dollar helps exports, whether they have a digitalized dollar for the citizens, which allows them to be completely tracked and locked in.
Mm-hmm. The Truth 999 says, Danielle, you're fired. Get out.
They should have, somebody should make Trump saying that.
Saying it. Option Trader says, once Alberta leaves, their lives change and what rises from the ashes scares them. Because it also becomes that obvious mirror that I always talk about. When Alberta becomes independent, it'll be an exact mirror image of what's happening in Canada. And now people can point and say, well, Alberta became independent and look how much better they're doing. Look how much money their citizens have. Look how much better everything has gotten for them. And yet, what are we doing here still in Canada?
Well, if Carney truly is trying to federalize natural resources, like I suspect, and I talk about a lot of the mechanisms he's building on a daily basis, Alberta leaving puts a big monkey wrench in that because it isolates British Columbia. And then if he does want to federalize natural resources, it's kind of, he's going to be going to Saskatchewan, but really tightening the screws on Saskatchewan. And people are going to start waking up there really, really quick.
Mm-hmm. Option Trader says, independence for Alberta is freedom. You guys aren't allowed the full fruits of your oil sector to truly build out your infrastructure province-wide. And what's more enraging is that we know that it could and it would. Do that.
Well, and there should be a huge mining sector within Alberta as well because the Rocky Mountains run through it.
Option Trader also says Alberta independence will let your new government build Alberta for the future. Right now, you can't.
Yeah, or at least it gives us a chance to stand on our own 2 feet.
Option Trader also says no such thing as hate speech. Yeah, I don't think it exists either. It's a mechanism of control, but says it's the lever to control your speech. Jordan Peterson was way out ahead of this issue back in 2015 because, again, Canada was already trying to implement all of this. And what they did to Jordan Peterson and how he stood up was just kind of like a teeny tiny taste of what they were already putting in motion because Canada is supposed to be that example to the rest of the Western democracies on globalism.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson is one of the great thinkers coming out of Canada. It's just a shame he's gotten as ill as he has. I hope he does get better soon. That being said, Bruce Party has really started to really fulfill that role. He's a constitutional scholar, and man, he's amazing. Alberta Independence is lucky to have him within the movement as well.
Primrose 007 says, Charles is not a king. The entire line of Windsor, which he is, are stewards of the true British crown. George V was forced out on July 17th, 1917. Look it up. And I do know that there is also like a potential actual king of England living somewhere in Australia because of all the weird things that happen. I did like British history, just like the shows like The Tudors and The Other Bullying Girl and all of that. But there was a lot of drama with that. And yeah, King Charles might actually not even be the king, the real king. I don't know if I'll get excommunicated.
I could care less if he's the king or not. Breaking free from the Westminster system, Canada, and in turn the UK is crucially important for Alberta at this point.
My Freedom Honey, hello, and thank you for being here. It says smash the like button. Thank you, and I always forget to ask, but yes, please do smash the like button because it really helps the video get out there in the algorithm. YouTube thinks people like us. Option Trader says not having a quote-unquote leader is big for you guys. They can't attack anyone and stop independence. They hate that. No one guy to attack or character assassinate. Very smart.
Yeah, they're trying their best, and you can see it was a good strategy overall. And there was a push to get a leader within Alberta Independence, and I think we went the right way at this point. Kathy Flett actually convinced me going leaderless was the way to go because there was other independence movements within Alberta before, and what they did was go after the leader or the political party and absolutely crush it. So trying a different option this time is really working to our advantage.
Now let's go into Alberta and the world. And let's start with this, oh God, from RMC86 that says, quote, "This CBC segment sent terror through the hearts of every liberal boomer frothing up the mouth with TDS, saying, quote, a number of us in the DC Bureau are not convinced that Democrats are going to do well in the midterms, particularly in the House."
And again, Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're talking a little bit about American politics because the midterms are going to be crucially important as well as the 2028 election, and it could dramatically affect the future of Alberta. That being said, every time you watch Canadian news, they have just been so smug over the last couple months. And I do grab every clip. They keep saying, well, we don't have to worry about Trump. The midterms are coming up. He's so far behind on the polls. He has no chance. Then we can freeze him out. And when 2028 comes, the Democrats are going to come back in, and then it will be business as usual. And man, that's not the case. The Republicans, for the first time in a long time, have a war chest that is far superior than the Democrats right now. And they haven't even begun to spend it. When they do, I think you're going to see those polling numbers become closer and closer. And a lot of Republicans in the United States don't answer to polls. That's why polling was so skewed when it came to different Trump elections.
Yeah. One thing that I think I want to put on the radar for Canadians, and I know that the history would put it that the Democrats would have a very strong turnout in the midterms, the way that the polls are suggesting it. A number of us in the DC Bureau, after doing many trips out into Republican country, I am not convinced that the Democrats are going to do as well in the midterms, particularly in the House. I don't think that, just based on when we go out and we go talk to people, I know it's very anecdotal. I'm not necessarily convinced that the historic trends that would normally happen in this moment, because it's just the way that Republicans have branded Democrats and the way it's resonated in small communities, or even like, anyway, we can talk about this in the second block of the Power Panel, but I'm not.
See, Katie, I baited you.
One thing that I think.
Okay, and one of the big threats to the midterms, though, and I wish I'd grabbed the article. I was waiting for the news to break. It was supposed to break at 6:00 tonight, and that is Tucker Carlson starting an America First party, potentially running for president. I don't think he's going to announce his candidacy, but that necessarily, I don't think would win the presidency. And the rumor is he's looking for somebody from the left to run on that ticket with him, to be the unity party of hope and change, much like, I guess they're going to try to brand it like Obama, hope, change, and unity. But even though they couldn't potentially win, what it will do is maybe keep people home in the midterms. And that's the biggest threat to the Republicans now. And that's vaping. So, yeah.
But what I was going to say with that is also the fact that now that we saw that, what's his face? The Muslim guy actually made it in. Help me.
I don't know the guy's name.
Okay. Well, the fact that now the Democrats are also scared with that they do have competition even within their own ranks.
Yeah, it looks
and then people like that in the CBC don't want to see it either.
Well, it looks a lot like the DSA is on the left, America First is on the right. I think both will end up being pushed out of the party and having a unifying party, ultimately to divide votes, not to win an election, I think.
But next, let's find a crazy story. Define L says, quote, Francesca Hong saying that global warming is an evil product of capitalism and celebration of white supremacy. So now there's an even deeper layer to it.
These were the same people that were saying climate change, climate change, climate change. Now they're saying, oh, climate change is white supremacy.
Because of course they had to join them both together.
Global warming is an evil product of capitalism. It's wrapped up in buzzwords like technological advancement, market competitiveness, or my favorite, fiscal responsibility. What we've learned is that the climate
It's insane to me that there's people booing fiscal responsibility, but
crisis is America's steadfast celebration of white supremacy. It is a testament to the same values that motivated Jim Crow, enslavement, redlining, settler colonialism, and the violent theft of indigenous lands and lives. Global warming is an evil.
And it's crazy how they're trying to rebrand the very thing that was their protest point for so many years.
Well, literally, she just used all the buzzwords.
Yeah.
And lastly, CTV News says, quote, Canada-US trade down almost $2 billion since early 2024.
Yeah, and this is only the beginning. It's going to be a long, hard road for Canada, especially with those comments that we put right off the top, where Donald Trump was talking about Canada using tariffs against the United States and saying they're very nasty. He pointed Canada out more than any other country today.
Mm-hmm. But now let's go back to reading your comments, and then we'll head into RUMBLE. Let me find where I was. 1 second. Option Trader says those numbers are lies and manipulated cherry-picked numbers. Carney just slammed Algoma Steel by buying submarines from Germany.
Yeah.
Primors 007 says they tried to open the door of my apartment. Also, the census people, I'm guessing, turn the handle and push the door like I keep my deadbolt closed. Why do they think they can just walk into people's house?
Well, and another thing with Mark Carney buying submarines off of the EU and fighter jets off of the EU and other huge military contracts for decades, they've got free military defense from the United States. And even if they overinvest now into the U.S. military industrial complex, they're still going to get far more in return of free national defense from the United States because of the proximity. A thank you would be nice rather than giving multi-billion-dollar contracts to the EU, who is looking for World War III right now.
The guys once again behind by one comment, but yes. And Yazinski says, I have census. Try my door to see if my to see if my door was unlocked, and then pound loudly. It does seem like they were almost instructed, like you have to get that census from these people, whatever means possible. Knock on the door, and if nobody answers, well, then just try to see if you can get in, and I guess find it for yourself.
I don't think so. I think they're probably giving a stipend for each one they can get filled out there. That's the best way to motivate people in the end.
Sean says, I would never enter a house unlocked or door wide open even. That's personal property and a personal space violation. Well, but again, that might be cultural because you're in the U.S.
Well, in Canada, where you don't have the right to defend your home with a weapon, I guess it's okay to do because there's no real consequences to coming on to somebody's land or into their home.
Mm-hmm. Sean says, is China buying Arctic land to own the Northwest Passage?
No, not that I've heard of. They do say they're a near Arctic state and they're beginning to work with Russia in order to lay a claim to that. That being said, they have been going through Canadian waters, claiming that it is international waters. Canada has been warning them, but Canada doesn't have a military to actually do anything about it. So Canada keeps saying that's our waters. China says, no, we're going to put our ships through there. That's international waters. And I guess at this point, it's international waters if you can't defend your own land.
Mm-hmm. Beulah Hillier says, talking about the king, some shows are saying in order for Canada to get its independence, the king has to give consent for independence to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of things they can try to say in order to block this thing, and that's why I keep saying we have to prepare for after binding referendum, potentially a unilateral declaration of independence that may be necessary. And in order for that to work, we need Donald Trump in office who will recognize Alberta as a free or independent country, or we're going to need whoever follows up after him to recognize Alberta. The most likely candidate is J.D. Vance that would recognize Alberta because he is the most populous candidate right now.
Sean says, USA got around that rule about the king giving consent. Yeah, you did. And Sean says, my buddy has an updated self-driving Tesla, and that car is just amazing because Pete said, I want every Canadian Tesla to come from the US by 2030.
Yeah.
And yet they want all those cars to actually become Chinese EVs that are way cheaper to produce, to get in, and that also explode. Option Trader says, we had, quote, Super Tuesday yesterday, nationwide local primary elections ahead of the November midterms, and the Democrats got crushed.
Yeah.
In the U.S.
Yeah, I was watching the results of that. It's very interesting kind of what happened with the DSA candidate. He barely eked out. He was 13 points ahead. There was votes kind of just coming in by the truckload at the end. 15,000 votes appeared out of nowhere, but it wasn't enough to kind of box him out.
Mm-hmm. Option Trader says, don't put too much hope in that so-called unity party. Is extremely fringe. Tucker Carlson is very unpopular here, which is what I continue saying. But
yeah, I really hope that's the case. And this is why we're starting to talk about this on Tuesday and Thursdays. We're in full support of Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Marco Rubio, especially for the next administration. And your non-America First candidates. The America First Party seems to have gone really, really far woke right. And I used to really like a lot of the people that were a part of that movement, but I woke up and thank God I did, because I was getting sucked down a rabbit hole there for a while.
Well, the retarded right. And let's just say some of us woke up a bit earlier than others.
Yeah, I do still watch. I've been watching a lot of interviews today to see what their strategy is going to be. It's going to be an anti-war party, anti-Israel party. And I think those two things is what they have in common with the DSA. That's why they're going to try to link up with the DSA once the DSA is pushed out and the America First party is pushed out of the Republican side. And their goal is not to win an election. They only need to get 3 or 5% to have a huge impact in the election to siphon off votes from one side.
Casey Willis says, in 2000, the minimum wage in Alberta was $7 per hour and gold was $408 per ounce in Canadian dollars. Today, the minimum wage is $15 and the gold is $5,985 an ounce. See the hidden truths.
Yeah, and Alberta, like, once it breaks free and is an independent nation, rather than taking dollars for its oil, it should just exchange gold for its oil, because the gold will go up over time.
Rage Against Machine says, why are we allowing foreign troops to protect China's assets?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say one more thing about the gold, actually, and that is Canada has absolutely no gold. They got rid of all their gold, and Alberta should build up some gold in reserve, and it would be nice if they backed their dollar with gold as well.
Mm-hmm. And thank you so much, Rage Against Machine, for the $10 super chat saying, keep up the great work. Love you both. Do you think we should start a militia?
I mean, not quite yet, but it did work for the United States.
That's what Sean was saying, that they got around that whole needing the king's consent.
Well, and the great thing here, and this is why we need to be reaching out to the Americans as well, not because we want to be the 51st state, but we want to be a free and independent nation. And one of the big points that's going to come after a non-binding referendum and then a binding referendum, if Canada says we need the king's consent or we need 9 other provinces' consent and we're not giving it to you, as long as we have a Donald Trump there or potentially a J.D. Vance, we do have the option of a unilateral declaration of independence and having not only the United States recognize us, but if they recognize us, the entire Shield of the Americas will recognize us at that point, which the United States is really organizing very well. Right now, we've already fled Canada. We live in Mexico, and there are major changes not only going on here, but in Central and South America because of the Shield of the Americas.
Rage Against Machine says, never give up your shovels. Mm-hmm. And other things. Option Trader says, we have firearms here. You don't try to enter a person's home unless you want to explain to God why you came to see him early. And again, we've lost that. That used to also be kind of ingrained within Canadians and the fact that they could protect themselves and those they loved and their property, but now they're not allowed to.
Well, it is still ingrained in Albertans, and this is a big reason people in Alberta will vote for independence, is firearms rights. And when we become our own free independent nation, we need concealed carry and open carry as well, because this can help prevent a lot of crimes, especially if we can form a high trust society again. Canada is kind of slipping from that because of mass immigration.
P. Griswold asks, what is he going to say? Officer, I got attacked while robbing that home. That's basically what they're saying now in Canada. And there's actual stories that are sound very similar to criminals saying that and actually getting away with what they were doing.
Yeah.
And with the person that defended themselves getting charged either as well or just getting charged by themselves, which is crazy. Over on RUMBLE, Shaunavision says, so newfie jokes are now illegal as they insult and show prejudice of a group based on ethnic origin, correct? If so, I know a broadcaster who made TV shows making fun of newfies. Well, now you can call on him, I guess, if you want. Hold on. Sean says, no, that's, where is it? Okay, Beulah Hillier says, thanks, Sean. That answers my question. Because Sean said, and now I can't find it. Sean says, no problem. Stand your ground doctrine is more powerful.
Okay, let's head over
and Rage Against Machine says, but even with their help, USA should we not have a force to keep the government out? And Sean says, if they come on your property without a warrant, quasi-Third Amendment violation. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, we need a force, but with somebody like Danielle Smith in there or Jason Kinney or anybody else, they're not trying to fight for Alberta's sovereignty. Even if you're inside of Canada, they like to say they are. They like to give lip service to it, but they're not going to take their money back from the CCP or the CPP, the Canadian Pension Plan, and put it in Alberta banks. They just shovel off hundreds of millions of dollars to Ottawa every single year. It's absolutely ridiculous. We need to get somebody in Danielle Smith's place that is going to put the screws to the federal government and really battle the federal government on sovereigntist issues, like taking that money back, like getting an Alberta sheriffs, make the federal government stand against Alberta's sovereignty so it can be an education to the Alberta people in real time that the federal government isn't going to give sovereignty to its provinces.
Option Trader says 1776 solves a lot of problems. And Bill Hillier says, I was born in Newfoundland. I don't mind Newfie jokes. But now we're heading over to RUMBLE. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet and like the video as well. You can find our RUMBLE channel name there. The show is not over, but there's some topics that YouTube doesn't like us to talk about. So we're heading over there now. There's a 30-second wait screen. We'll see you over there.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Thank you for waiting.